So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear audience. I think it's time to get started. So, second day of GFFA and another one of the very interesting, hopefully interesting expert panels. We have a great panel actually, and we have also a great topic to share. My name is Christine Lang. I'm co-chair of the International Bioeconomy Council, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here and talk about an interesting and important topic in the bioeconomy. So it's on frameworks and it's on innovation. So the topic is that we have is innovations from indigenous knowledge and science with nature-based approaches. This already gives you some insight where we are heading. Innovation is key, that's what we think. We will talk about it, we'll discuss it. What is it? With bringing together technology-based approaches, bio-based, traditional knowledge approaches, and hopefully at the end we will come to a discussion on if there is an innovation, what I'm sure we will see in the examples we have, how does it get to action? And what do we have to do to implement things? This is especially important in view of the political developments. We've seen G20, we have GFFA on the bioeconomy. We have had a great Global Bioeconomy Summit, and we have a lot of momentum at the moment. But this momentum is only as good as the implementation. So I hope we will hear about that, and we also want to discuss. The structure of this expert panel workshop is that we have a few talks of our panelists first, and then we will open discussion. So prepare yourself for bringing in questions, bringing in your comments on this topic, and at the end we will try to finalize it and bring it together. So let's welcome and welcome with me our panelists. These are Kanya Wim Kirtikar from Thailand, Greg Jeffy from USA, Karina Pimenta from Brazil, Ben Durham from South Africa, and Joachim von Baum from Germany. Please welcome them and please come up to the stage. So our first speaker this morning will be Professor Kanya Wim Kirtikara. Kanya Wim earned her PhD in genetics from University of Connecticut and completed postdoctoral fellowships at Rutgers University and University of Tennessee. She began her career at the National Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, serving as its director for a number of years. She was Vice Minister for Science and Technology, and in that she was instrumental in drafting Thailand's biocircular green economy model, which is well known everywhere when you look at strategies for bioeconomy. She became first director of a frontier research funding agency, is now KMUTT's senior vice president for research and innovation, president of the Thai Academy of Science and Technology. She actively advocates technologies that harness Thailand's natural resources to drive the bioeconomy. And Kanya Wim, please come up to the stage and talking about bioeconomy as a component of economic development in Thailand and ASEAN. Kanya, thank you.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to be here. Actually, I have 7 minutes, so I would make about 3 points, not more than that. The first thing I would like to introduce about bioeconomy in ASEAN. If you know about ASEAN, ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It comprises of 10 countries together as listed. It's important. Why ASEAN is important? Because of the size. It has about over 600 million people, even though that's about half the size of China. And the combined GDP is about number 5th in the world. So that's why when ASEAN is looking at bioeconomy, it definitely will have some impact. In ASEAN, we have interested in bioeconomy, a long time ago, even though we don't call it bioeconomy itself. But actually, it started out as biotechnology. If you look at various policies of some of the countries I showed on the slides, for example, Malaysia. Malaysia started with the policy on biotechnology since 2005. That was quite early on. And that's the same with Thailand also, which I will focus later. We believe in the using science to make advantage of biological resources that ASEAN countries have. We have the same biodiversity, similar richness in biodiversity, a lot of microbes, a lot of plants, a lot of animals. In the old days, the policies probably looking at using biological resources directly as biological resources. However, you'll see that in ASEAN countries, many policies talk about biotechnology, which means that we would like to use science and technology to create value for biodiversity and biological resources that we have. In terms of Thailand, let me focus about my country a little bit. We established the National Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology since 1983. So you see that we believe in science and technology and innovation, that it would create value from our biological resources 40 years ago. Even though, again, we don't call it bioeconomy yet. I think bioeconomy is a new term that came later. Biotechnology came before, but it's the same context, using science and technology to create value. We have the National Biotechnology Policy Framework since 2004. We have Thailand 4.0 strategy around 2017, and that's also talking about bioeconomy already back then. The most important thing is the biocircular green economy model. This was accepted by the government in 2021. If you look at the figure on the left, it talks about bioeconomy, it talks about circular economy with some intersection, and everything is within the framework of green economy. So we believe that bioeconomy will create the value from renewable resource. It would mitigate greenhouse gas. It would create sustainable development. Circular economy will also help reuse, recycle. And again, some of bioeconomy, you reuse the stuff also. And then everything will lead to the reduce in greenhouse gas and also the promotion of the inclusive growth. If I gave a little bit more details in terms of how we look at value creation in bioeconomy, in Thailand we look at 4 sectors. The baseline, not the baseline, the platform is that we talk about biodiversity and cultural diversity also. We cannot use one and leave out the other because it intertwines in the life of people in Thailand. We look at 4 important sectors. We look at agriculture and food. We look at energy and materials, health and medicine, and also tourism. We talk about inclusive growth in that you talk about the foundation of the pyramid. Those are farmers. Those are people who use traditional knowledge. The driving force for that is to create more productivity with science and technology. And then again, if you can use advanced science and technology, you can create more value. And that will drive from the bottom of the pyramid, from the productivity increase to value creation at the top. We still use medicinal herbs. However, we don't talk about only bioactive compounds. We talk about biopharma, biosimilar, and all the new molecules that come out from biotechnology production. We have a culture collection of microorganisms with over 100,000 isolates kept in our collection. And that would be used again and again as a base of biotechnology to promote bioeconomy of the future. The last part that I would like to talk about is that We believe in using the advance of science and technology. Currently, we are talking about the term synthetic biology. You might have heard before here in Europe, they might call it engineering biology, which is a way using advance of biotechnology to create new organisms that would promote precise way, using engineering concept to promote the precise way of producing new products. So you will see that in Thailand and also in other ASEAN countries, we are not reluctant to use technology to enhance what we have as biological resources. Currently, we are drafting a new roadmap for synthetic biology that would be our new S-curve in biotechnology. We will keep using what we call traditional biotechnology, but we will add synthetic biology or engineering biology on top of that. You will see that the example is that right now Thailand and Malaysia are together hand in hand doing the status of synthetic biology in Southeast Asia as a way to advance our bioeconomy. We got this project supported by FCDO from the UK because they are looking for partners, and they're thinking that in the area of ASEAN, some countries are already ready to move into the field of synthetic biology. So we are doing policy right now. We are looking for partners, and we hope that when the project is done, we will know the status of Malaysia, they will know the status of Thailand, and hands in hands we can move on to use synthetic biology to produce bioeconomy. So I think with the time I have, I think I made 3 points. Number one is that in the region of ASEAN, bioeconomy has been around for a long time, even though we don't call it bioeconomy per se at the beginning. We started with biotechnology, using technology to advance the value of biological resource. The second part is that Thailand is also very advanced in moving forwards with biotechnology and bioeconomy. We have the policy along the way. And the third part is that ASEAN countries are not reluctant to use the latest technology available to create value of biological resources, to lead to the reduction in greenhouse gas, to lead to inclusive economy. We don't leave anybody behind. We move the whole platform from increasing productivity to value added. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kanyum. I think a great example of showing how both the traditional and the most modern biotechnology and knowledge go together to form an economy. Our next speaker in line today is Greg Jaffe. Greg is coming from USA. He's international expert on bioeconomy and biotechnology. He was senior advisor for regulatory affairs for the USDA secretary, where he worked on many issues, including bioeconomy, biofuels, food loss and waste, pesticides, PFAS, food safety, scientific research and development. Greg led the USDA's implementation of the US Biotechnology and Manufacturing Executive Order and was a member of the National Bioeconomy Board. Greg will today give us some insight on the bioeconomy and climate policy in US, innovations for health, agriculture and industry. Welcome, Greg, to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation in bioeconomy and give as the examples my country, the United States. I think when I was looking over all my slides and preparing last night, I realized the 2 points coming out of it, I think, is you can't have innovation without partnerships and collaboration. And you'll see that throughout the presentation about that need to have that partnership and collaboration. So I wanted to start off by talking, mentioning the benefits of bioeconomy. This is the US bioeconomy, but could be any countries really. And I think there are economic benefits, environmental benefits, food and nutrition benefits. I'm probably not telling this audience anything new, but I do want to stress the rural economies and communities. that really is important. How do we keep farmers on the farm farming, and by giving them new income streams? And I think bioeconomy really does that, and that's one of the key factors pushing bioeconomy in the United States. So as Christine mentioned, our governance, I want to sort of talk about a couple of innovations here. One is an innovation in governance. We have an executive order, a little different than other countries' bioeconomy strategies, but it is a whole of government look at bioeconomy and how do we implement and bring it vibrant bioeconomy to the US. And what I really wanted to mention was one of the things we did under this is set up a national bioeconomy board. So this is a board run out of the White House, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and has about a dozen different departments all on it. I represented USDA on it. And we meet every 3 months, and really is an attempt to implement the executive order, but also to think more strategically about bioeconomy, and through that, build both partnerships and collaboration, so that if 2 departments are working together, they can have better synergies and actually get more for your buck. A second area of innovation is really in research and development. The United States, USDA spends over $500 million in the past year just on bioeconomy research, but there are other departments that do the same thing. But what I think is unique about this is it's not, some of it's basic research, the kind of research you think the federal government might fund, but a lot of it also is applied research. And many of our research partners for the federal grants are actually small startup industries, small businesses, helping them get off the ground, helping them take a concept and put it into a product and into the marketplace. Not your usual way that you see government R&D money being spent for, but here in the bioeconomy, that's really needed. And so, we've done things on vaccines and bio-based products. In fact, where US government researchers have actually developed a product and then handed it to industry to say, okay, now bring it to market and so forth. So I think that's an interesting thing. One very interesting research project, Department of Energy, is looking at a bunch of different energy crops, purpose-grown energy crops, and this is a long-term study, so not just to see how these crops do to produce energy, but also what's their carbon intensity, how much nitrogen do they use, doing a whole type of measurements and collecting a whole database so that we can not only do the products, but we can also measure them and see those benefits that come from climate and so forth. Many of you may have heard of our Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities. This was a partnership coming out of USDA. We invested over $3 billion in 141 pilot projects. And what I like about this is each of these projects in and of themselves, which are tens of millions of dollars each, take a complete supply chain look at things. So they have farmers involved in the project who are going to implement the climate smart practices. We have academics who are measuring the greenhouse gas benefits from the projects. And then we have retailers and others who are going to take those to market and market them to consumers. And so, I give you a few examples here that are related to bioeconomy, a climate smart camelina that would be used for biofuels, a low carbon intensity corn that will be used for biofuels. One of my favorite is the desert shrub guayuli. It's a low intensity, water intensity crop that can be grown in the Southwest that can be a natural supply of rubber. It produces rubber, and we're beginning to see tires made from these guayuli plants. And then also we had a climate smart rice. If you go in the supermarket now, consumers can buy a climate smart rice that was made with, that farmers use climate smart practices, and it's made it, and it's specially labeled in the marketplace, all from this project. I also wanted to give an example of how do we innovate in infrastructure. So, I think we've talked about this, and yesterday the talk was how do we get good ideas and good products to market, and that is, there are a number of different roadblocks there. So as the US government, we did sort of look at those roadblocks, and one roadblock we saw in particular was the scale-up period of time for biofermentation. How do you take a product that's at small scale and show proof of concept so that you can get the funding to then build a plant to do that? And in the United States, there was a lack of capacity to do that. We just don't have those facilities. And so we've taken a whole government approach to put money and investment into that. So USDA has set up a bio-based market development and access grant program that gives up to $10 million to companies that are in that intermediate stage to do a proof of concept at 20 or 50,000 liter vessel. We have BioMade, which is a Department of Defense project that's actually going to be building up to 11 facilities that will have these biofermentation facilities that companies can come and rent different size vessels and do their testing at. We have the Department of Commerce that's invested in tech hubs, and one of these tech hubs I went to in Illinois, the Fermentation Tech Hub, and they're using existing facilities, redoing them so that there's, in the biofermentation, that there's 1,500 liter, 3,000, and up to 80,000 liter tanks that are available for companies to use to, again, show proof of concept, to do runs of their projects, to get themselves, that they can get the capital to then build the plants to do them at full scale. Finally, I'll mention, we have to measure the bioeconomy. We've spent at USDA, I guess, $300 million in how to measure some of the climate smart practices and soil sequestration and other things to try to do that. But the idea is that when we can measure the bioeconomy, that helps get more investment, that helps get people more excited about this. And so that's very important to do. Our latest numbers showed, almost $500 billion contributed to the US bioeconomy from bio-based products that did not include bioenergy, that did not include biofuels. So I think I'm going to end there. I was going to talk about 2025 and beyond, but I don't think I have time for that. But ask me questions if you want. We ever know it's on everybody's mind that we do have a new administration starting next week. And thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much, Greg. It was very impressive, and I think a lot of things can be learned from this, or we can discuss it later. But for one thing, it's enabling environments from government that really make things run, money, of course, if I see this, but also a strategy that comes from quite high level that gives you that. I think there will be a number of questions coming up, and a lot of things that can serve as examples, I suppose, for some governments and some people in ministries. Now, our third speaker this morning is coming from Brazil. We are very happy to have Secretary Pimenta here. Secretary Pimenta, Karina Pimenta is, just a moment, I have her bio here, so I don't do any wrong things. She was appointed National Secretary of Bioeconomy at invitation of Minister of the Environment. She has a degree in Business Administration and Social Development. She co-founded Connexus in 2018, having previous work also in the private sector. And she has developed an expertise in green finance, innovative impact financing, market access strategies, small business entrepreneurship. And most importantly, I think she was instrumental in launching, during the World Environmental Day ceremony, the National Bioeconomy Strategy in Brazil, the first national regulation of bioeconomy in the country. And of course, which is also very important, she was part of the G20 initiative on bioeconomy from Brazil. And I think we will learn from her now what is important in a country like Brazil to bring bioeconomy forward. This will be biodiversity, entrepreneurship, indigenous knowledge, tech-driven bioeconomy. So we are looking forward to your talk, Karina. Welcome.
Good morning to everyone. So I'll just put 6 minutes here. Okay, so this is a very challenging thing. So I will focus on one piece of our bioeconomy approach in Brazil that fits into this panel. I like the name of using indigenous knowledge and science as part of bioeconomy. This is not as usual as the traditional bioeconomy approach that we see. So I'll focus on this piece for this intervention. So first of all, Brazil, as Christine already mentioned, launched its first national strategy last year on the Environmental Day, a landmark for us in what means to pursue, to move from a sector approach to a national approach on bioeconomy. In the past, Brazil has been very successful in terms of looking into agriculture and bioenergy as parts of our bioeconomy strategy, both in the R&D and biotechnology and all the GDP that comes out of it. But now in a national approach, we have the challenge of expanding our views and incorporating other pieces of what means bioeconomy for Brazil. And this also means for us, very importantly, that we have a look into ecosystem service and biodiversity from a different lens, not only as part of an environmental concern, but actually as an engine that can also improve Brazil's performance economically and environmentally in a plan for ecological transformation. We have launched in Brazil the Ecological Transformation Pact, which ensures that the three powers, the legislative, the judicial, the legal, and the executive, are committed to this transformation. And the national strategy comes into that, ensuring that we will have this approach on the different spheres. As part of my biography, Christine, I'm also a representative of the National Authority on Genetic Resources and traditional knowledge associated to genetic resources. And this has been one of our pieces that we wanted to improve in the National Strategy on Bioeconomy, is how we pursue a different but very sophisticated system to help traditional population and indigenous populations to have their place into the science, into the knowledge, and into this new bioeconomy. For us, they are an integral part of this. So there's an approach specific for that. If you look into our strategy, that's the only objective that's placed there. All the other industries and sectors are now being prioritized for our plans, or the development of plan in bioeconomy. But this was already mentioned because it is a commitment from our government to make sure that we have a development plan for this population, who ensures 50% of our natural areas in Brazil. So they're the ones protecting that, but also we don't have the means or the strategies for ecosystem of innovation that supports them into participating to this bioeconomy. And why they're important? If you look at the use of genetic resources in Brazil, they're a very important piece of how researchers and innovation emerge. You do basic research, you do applied research, you do all that, and many times they are part of the innovation piece. We have a regulatory approach for that, but without incentives, this is kind of only protecting, only making sure, and that's very important, that we protect the knowledge that they have, and we make sure that the benefit sharing associated to that is there to respect the protocol, the Nagoya Protocol and all. But for us, what is interesting about bioeconomy is the opportunity to have an R&D system, an ICT system that will promote this. And why it's that important, not only for indigenous people and traditional people, because part of the success of our agribusiness in the future, of climate resilient approach, of social development in Brazil, is associated to this, the knowledge these people have, not only in the protection, but also into participating in this economy. And that's why we are developing some instruments that was important for us in the G20 last year to make sure that this part was recognized among the principles of bioeconomy. That's why we were very happy with the WIPO agreement after 30 years, recognizing that we have to ensure that when you use genetic resources for bioinputs, bioprocess, bioplastics, that biopharmaceuticals, that we recognize and we have a benefit and ABS system associated to that. That's why we are so interested in relating more, not only climate to bioeconomy, but also biodiversity and the Convention on Biodiversity into this agenda, because as the Cali Fund that was making into effect last year in the copy of CDB shows, there are high interests in seeing biotechnology emerging from this knowledge from biodiversity. And Brazil as a natural resource of that, holding more than 20% of the bioeconomy in Brazil, the biodiversity of the world, has a comparative place that can become a competitive agenda for us if we have the right instruments in place. And that's what we are doing with our national bioeconomy agenda, making sure specifically that the ecosystem for innovation in ICT will look into specifics for this group. And there are specifics approaches because we don't have ICT that encompasses the differentiated approach that we need to have for traditional people to be part of the R&D development. So part of our work has been to narrow down policy making that will support not only in training, but also the ICT system in Brazil, how to operate within the lines of this legislation and also promote incentives. And I think this is the most difficult part because it's still R&D investment is very much focused on the industries that we already know. Because they were the engine behind. So what we want to do is to have a complementary system for these people to be part of this. And I think one of the approaches that we have launched on the CDB meeting last October was an international partnership meeting with ICTs of the world interested in researching and innovating through Brazil's biodiversity. And this network is not only, it's a very important approach because the regulation sometimes makes people afraid of cooperating with Brazil. And we created a system where we can share how the legislation work, how ICTs can engage with Brazil. And it's also a network of Brazilian institutes who will also be able to cooperate internationally with these associations. This for us is very important to reach these international cooperation and global partnerships on the field of biodiversity. And just to give you some numbers to finish my intervention, Brazil has over 80,000 R&D approaches right now being operated through our traceability system on genetic resources and ICTs. But only 80% of the patents resulting from that are registered in Brazil. 92% are registered internationally. So this is the size of the change we want to do to make sure that Brazil can be a part of this biotechnology revolution that is coming and it's coming and it's coming. And not only because to support our agribusiness, who will need that for all the climate changes that we are facing and all the climate resilience that we have to build in the field to continue to be a very important food producer, and bioenergy, but also to make sure that we have an approach into our industrial side. And just to finish, one of the accomplishments that we have just before the launching the national strategy was that our new industrialization policy was launched at the beginning of last year, 1 year ago, has a mission on bioeconomy. And this mission says that the most important indicator of it is not carbon. It is not GDP. It is the use of genetic resources associated to bioinnovations. And I think this is very innovative for Brazil and an immense challenge for our R&D system to cope with this and support the system. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. Very interesting, I think, intervention on how a country like Brazil comes together, if I may say so, from the bioenergy, which was really the most important in Brazil, and now going into a broader region, looking at the diversity, the biodiversity, and trying to keep and use that. So very interesting approaches that Brazil is taking with their nature, with the nature that is there, that we all depend on. It's not just a Brazilian question, but it's a planetary health question, that we keep biodiversity and work on that. Good. Now, our next speaker on this topic comes from South Africa. Welcome with me, Ben Durham. Ben Durham is the Chief Director of Bioinnovation at National Department of Science, Technology, Innovation in South Africa. He's responsible for implementing the South African bioeconomy strategy, the ultimate purpose of which is to ensure strategic socio-economic and environmental benefits from bioinnovation. And Ben is leading the charge on bioeconomy initiative under the South African presidency of the G20 this year. So looking forward, Ben, to your innovation inputs to drive bioeconomy development, a G20 perspective. Welcome, Ben.
Good morning, all. I'm pressing my start button, so I will try and keep to the time. I've got a 3-hour talk that I'm condensing into the 6 minutes. Thanks very much, Christine, for the introduction. So I'm talking to innovation inputs for bioeconomy development. And I'm covering a lot of ground. This is our bioeconomy strategy, the 4 pillars of the strategy. Health innovations. South Africa, Southern Africa, has the greatest human genomic diversity in the world. So we're seeing this as part of indigenous valorization, because medicines, it's estimated that 70% of medicines do not work as they are developed on Southern African populations because of our genetic diversity. So 70% don't work exactly as prescribed, or may have much more serious side effects or worse. But there's a range of interventions that we're doing. Health innovation is definitely part of our bioeconomy strategy. Agricultural innovation, our focus is on small-scale farmers. South Africa has an unemployment rate of 33%. The expanded definition is 42% of South Africans are unemployed. It is absolutely critical that we develop and create jobs and livelihoods for the population. Small-scale farmers are seen as one of the ways of expanding employment. We are looking at high-value and indigenous crops, because we can't compete with the world with large-scale farming. We have to look at high-value crops and certain indigenous crops. And then obviously climate change resilience is of growing importance. Industry and the environment, to produce bioeconomy goods, if it's not the primary production that's producing them, you need bioprocessing capabilities, and you need biorefinery capabilities to turn raw materials into more value-added materials, and the associated skills with that, biocatalysis, biofarming, and developing bio-entrepreneurs to create companies, to create jobs, etc., etc. And then the last leg is indigenous knowledge, technology, innovation. As Karina has mentioned, in Brazil, this is one of our key areas. We are creating more jobs in this one area than we are pretty much for the other 3 areas combined. It's a highly productive area. Our approach is a little bit singular. We put the knowledge holder and their community at the center of decision-making associated with a particular product's development. So this is not taken away from the community, from the knowledge holder, and developed. The knowledge holder, the community, is at the center of its development, and there is skills transfer and co-development with scientists and with the market. And the products range from cosmeceuticals, nutraceuticals, health beverages, African traditional medicines, and it's obviously very much a nature-based bioprocess. Just to point out, of the 3 dimensions of the bioeconomy, which Brazil championed at their G20 in their high-level principles, South Africa focuses on the first 2, the social and economic side. We're not disregarding the environmental side, but it is critically important that we create jobs and livelihoods for our people, so our focus is on the social and economic. So talking to innovation, innovation is critically important. We recognize that the world is changing, climate is changing the world, and we need our crops and livestock to be better adapted to this changing world, but I want to focus on some of the more important innovations. We need greater political recognition of the ramifications of climate change. The world in 50 years' time is not going to be like we are here. There will be much greater hunger because the productivity of plants and animals under heat stress conditions is far less. There will be far more extinctions. The populations of wild organisms will be far lower. And so our ability to develop a bioeconomy in such conditions is going to be severely impacted. So we need political recognition that it's not enough that each country does something, that this is a global crisis that we are facing. So that's one innovation we require. I've kind of touched on the fact that there will have to be a new world order where the whole world responds collectively to this climate change crisis. And we need to take global responsibility for what we've done to the environment, and it's going to require a much more partnered approach across the globe to address these challenges. It's not enough that every country does its best. We also need to work collectively. So a globally coordinated response, one of the key issues, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up. Intellectual property. We fully support that we need to incentivize innovators to create new innovations, but there are some innovations that are ready for the market, such as biofuel development, that we need to be far more open with sharing so that the world starts responding much more appropriately without not being able to participate because of IP costs and so on. We need to transform economies into bioeconomies. We need to increase understanding and predictions of climate change, etc., and so on. So this is my last slide, G20 initiative on bioeconomy, that South Africa has the presidency for this year, following from Brazil last year. Brazil, we've reached the 10 high-level principles, a really kind of groundbreaking effort to get the world to agree, obviously only the G20, but that's kind of representing the world, to reach agreement on what the bioeconomy of the future must look like. The first point that we will be undertaking under our presidency is to unpack those high-level principles, to create standards and metrics so that we can measure bioeconomy development and look at investment and trade incentives to support bioeconomy development. We all need to be talking about the same thing. We need to have kind of a credibility in what we're talking about. The second point, financing instruments for bioeconomy actions. As I said, let me say, in Africa, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of financing for bioeconomy development. We've got systems that are based on the export of raw materials. Africa is very much based on bioeconomy approach, but it's based on the export of raw materials. We need to valorize those raw materials in Africa to create jobs and livelihoods and then export them. So we need financing, we need skills development, etc., etc. There are massive opportunities in Africa, in the global south. Thailand gave an indication of that, but Africa certainly is the same. Because we already are bioeconomy based, but we need to valorize that bioeconomy goods to create greater value for Africa and for jobs. And the last point then is we've got to stop talking about things, we've got to start doing things. And we are proposing in the G20 initiative this year a platform that will start that implementation, that will look at how do we design and deploy projects that are context-specific to particular regions, to particular countries. To get them to develop, we need thought leadership. We need to create all the right environment for bioeconomies to flourish. Trade is obviously a critical thing where we are creating markets for bioeconomy goods, recognizing that bioeconomy goods are going to come at a premium because we are currently subsidizing fossil fuel use, and we need to move away from that and start subsidizing legitimate bioeconomy goods. That's where I'm ending and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Ben. Lots of things to start discussion on, and what we see is bioeconomy is still different, even in South Africa from other examples we've seen, but still some things come up that are somehow coming back, like standards and metrics. I remember that Greg said that also some of the measuring is important. Financing comes back as one, and of course implementation. Now, we come to the last speaker this morning, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Joachim von Braun on this panel. Joachim and I have been working for quite a long time. We start working together in the German Bioeconomy Council and also starting together the Global Bioeconomy series, but Joachim does a lot more. He's Professor Emeritus for Economic and Technology Change at Bonn University in Germany in the Center for Development Research. And his research on food, nutrition, agriculture, economic development, bioeconomy, science, technology, policy. He's president of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in the Vatican, member of German National Academy of Science, Leopoldina, African Academy of Science, the World Academy, and other academies. And he's also not only member of the International Advisory Council on Bioeconomy, but also member of high-level advisory board on the UN Food Systems Summit, vice president of the NGO Welthungerhilfe, and he's published a lot of publications. And I'm very happy to welcome Joachim here. You're the last speaker in this round, so I suppose you may mention some of the things that have been before, but also come from your experience. Thank you. Welcome, Joachim.
Thank you, Christine. It is really good that this GFFA is on bioeconomy. From a German perspective, I think it's good because it helps revitalize federal bioeconomy initiatives. What we have observed in the last 10 years is that a lot of bioeconomy initiatives have been taken at the state level in Germany. And whereas at the federal level, sort of the impetus had slowed down. So I commend the Ministry of Food and Agriculture that they brought bioeconomy back to this level in the GFFA. I would have liked to see the logo on the screen because I take issue with it. The GFFA logo, you remember, there walks a cow, there drives a tractor, there are some crops, a chicken roams the world. I think this is completely misleading. Bioeconomy is about people, nature, and innovation. And so get this image out of your mind. Artistically, it looks very nice. So I commend the artists. I don't want to be too aggressive this morning. I want to briefly talk about agri-food systems and the linkages to bioeconomy. We need sustainable food systems that serve people and planet. That is not simply a supply and demand thing, not a value chain thing. It is a systems thing. And the United Nations Food Systems Summit has put this really to the forefront. Sustainable agri-food systems cannot be achieved in isolation. That's why we need the bioeconomy umbrella around it, that lead us to a bio-based economy. We talk so much about transition, transformation, but transformation to what? Transition where to? What's the end game? The end game is a dynamically changing bio-based economy. My second point relates to partnerships, global partnerships and local partnerships. There we really have a challenge. We have a challenge because bioeconomy does not fit common criteria of sectoral policies. We have a trend, as you have heard in previous sessions and in this one, towards a bio-based economy coming from different trajectories. But we also have, since the last few years, a trend towards building food systems strategies country by country. After the Food Systems Summit in 2021, more than 100 countries have written themselves new and more credible food system strategies. And at the same time, about 50, 60 countries have written themselves bioeconomy strategies. We need to bring them together. They are not the same. They have an overlap. So I think that's where we have a challenge of governance of food systems and governance of the bioeconomy. At the global level, we need a platform of partnerships, because the interaction on bioeconomy requires also international standard setting, knowledge sharing across countries. I think you have had beautiful examples from Brazil, South Africa, Thailand, and the US here. And what is more, there are dedicated bioeconomy strategies around the world, and they differ. Each of them is different. The Chinese strategy, more or less simultaneously revitalized as the US strategy a couple of years ago, is different, but has similar elements as well. So we need a platform on which bioeconomy can dance, and a platform of partnerships that is not just food, but is a broader platform of bioeconomy. And a key role, in my opinion, has to play the food component on that platform, which should be spearheaded by FAO. Let me lastly come to innovation economics. Karina has already highlighted the importance of indigenous and traditional and local knowledge. We had a conference with Pope Francis in the Vatican on bringing together indigenous and traditional knowledge and science. Initially, there was a lot of talk more from the science community. We need to combine traditional and indigenous knowledge with the science. We came out with a different perspective due to very powerful participants' statements from the indigenous knowledge community. They argue not for combining, but for braiding. You know, when you braid hair or something, the things come together, but are still identifiable as separate. So we need a braiding strategy, was our message, to bring together but maintain the identity of indigenous knowledge and the sciences. We have insufficient collaborative mechanisms for that braiding. We need to have a clear focus of strategic partnerships on climate, we need to start dialogues for recognizing the rights violations of indigenous peoples, and the focus on pharma and biodiversity, which Karina has already mentioned, is a key one. But let's have startups together, not only coming out of the science community. And let's have a strong focus on a different treatment of the soils of the world. Soils and land use and forests in indigenous communities have been preserved for the long term, and many of us in science can and need to learn from it. So we need a different innovation economics, we need global partnerships. Agri-food systems are an essential part of the bioeconomy, and we all can learn from each other. Thank you for your attention.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Joachim, for this intervention on the, is it working? Yeah, on the partnerships, on platforms. I'm just looking at, thinking of a dance for all the bioeconomies of the world to come together in one. So we will see how that is working, and definitely startups have been mentioned also before for a number of things. I think this is very important for innovation, to bring innovation to the market. So before we start opening the floor to you, just get your questions ready. I would like to have one question going around to the panel, and this goes to the fact: what is happening now? What are the ideas for implementing things and implementing strategies, implementing innovation, and is there some idea for actions? And then I come to you. So, Karim, we may start with you.
In terms of implementing, people talking about the breeding model. I think in Thailand, we called it the quadruple helix model. We look at 4 partners. First is the government. The government provides platform in terms of funding, in terms of policy, for example, tax incentive to help bioeconomy company or the board of investment, bringing in the bioeconomy company from abroad. This is the role of the government. And also the other important thing of the government is the regulatory. Bioeconomy always leads to new products. And the regulatory agencies, if they don't catch up with new products, then the new products cannot go to the market. So that's the role of the government. The second role, the second braid or whatever, is the academics. University prepare human resources, reskill, upskill, new skill for the new technology and new product in the industry. And also, academy is the source of knowledge and innovation, and that's the role of the second agent. The third one is the industry. They are the one who sees the market. They are the one who see the market. They are the one who bring innovation to people. That's we always have to bring in industry. Otherwise, the academic will do the research, and there is no one will use it. You have to bring in the industry early because they are the one who will create the value in the market. And the last one of the quadruple helix is the civil society. They are the one who benefits from the creation, from the value added to the bioresource, but they also the one that will accept or reject the creation of new product. So that we would bring them in terms of transparency, make them understand what the bioeconomy will be benefit for them. And also we cannot forget that the civil society also hold knowledge. I talk about in Thailand, we have biodiversity, we have cultural diversity. So they are the one who also can create the knowledge to this quadruple helix platform also.
Great, thank you very much. There's one more question. Is there some kind of mechanism to measure how innovation goes to the market, how innovation is setting off?
Right. For example, with the BCG policy that established in 2021, we measure, the contribution to the GDP from the biocircular green economy model. We look at the number of new companies being established. We look at the number of employments increase from this. So we set the target for each year that can be measured directly.
Okay, thank you. I just keep on, Karina, I would ask you next on this. So innovation coming to the market and really being there. You have mentioned some numbers, like numbers of projects and patents. Is there anything else you would suggest how we can bring innovation to the market? Where's the impact of bioeconomy?
Well, we have been working on some implementation strategies for bioeconomy, which I think tackles what you're envisioning. Thinking about, then it's a domestic approach, because Brazil is a very big country. And if you want to reach out to the different types of population, rural and forest, especially indigenous and traditional, what we are looking to the implementation strategy for the bioeconomy that holds the social bioeconomy, as we said, is the building of what we call biohubs. Yeah, because one of the things is that the knowledge is not there. They are there, it's there, but the process that will make sure the engines that go behind it's not there. So I was even looking into a number here, just to say that the Amazon, for example, has 34 research centers, but only 2 courses of excellence in botany, just to give an example. And that is one of the places that we lack most entrepreneurial approaches. Acceleration, incubation, all this, it's not there. So the biohubs is an implementation strategy for the bioeconomy that we've been developing. It holds a territorial approach with the services that we need. It's basic. It's like innovation ecosystem approach. But sometimes we need the basic to be able to go next. So that is one of the approaches that we are developing. The second part is that you asked, that I wanted to mention actually, is that to see bioeconomy evolving, we do need a system. I know we are going to do that on G20, on measurement and monitoring. We don't have that in Brazil. So people give numbers of the size of bioeconomy, but we actually don't have what is bioeconomy, what is not. Yeah, that's okay. So what we are building now is the structure of a ecosystem, of a national system for data and information, and that connects with the genetic resource system, for example, that connects with the agriculture system. So that's the idea, that we be able to use that to do better policy and improve that over the years.
Okay, thank you very much. Ben, this question is, I mean, this is one of your main challenges for G20 about the bringing things into innovation to the market and doing a way to action, let's say. So just some ideas on that for us.
Thanks, Christine. I'm probably going to mention only really one point, and it's the African perspective. Please excuse me, but that's where I'm from. The colonial system was set up and developed for the export of raw materials back to the colonial power. So the system has been created for this. And what we need to do is change that mindset in Africa, that we want to valorize the product at home. So there's a huge opportunity. And it doesn't necessarily seem so difficult. We just have to do it. But the system is set up this way, and to change a system is a complex task. So I'm not belittling how important the process is. But the key thing, one of the key things, is market development. Markets are protective. Everyone is protecting their market. And Africa, if it wants to develop this bioeconomy into valorized products, is going to have to break into markets. And that brings me back to a point that I made in my talk. there's going to have to be a new world order where instead of competing so much, I'm not against competition, but instead of competing so much, we need to start working together and supporting and helping and assisting so that we can improve the bioeconomy by working together for the planet's good. So it's new thinking about how we do things. As I said, I'm not against competition. We need it to come up with new innovations and so on, but there are certain steps that the planet requires for us to make it more sustainable. We need to look at things like biofuels and say, instead of the continuing extraction of biofuels, how do we stimulate fossil fuels? Instead of continuing the extraction of fossil fuels, we need to create biofuels by working together, by sharing technologies so that we all start producing more and more biofuel to replace the demand on the fossil fuels, reduce those incentives for fossil fuels, create incentives for biofuels. So it's a new world order of thinking of how we can work together.
Thank you, Ben. Greg, implementation in US, I think this is your chance to talk about the future.
Well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but I did have 2 points to make about your implementing strategies. And I think there are two things. One is, and I think it picks up on what Ben was saying, you know, bio-based products in a lot of cases are competing with petroleum-based products, which have been in the market for decades, which have an infrastructure that's been paid off for decades. And so they just have the cost of production. But if you have a bio-based product, you have a new technology that's not necessarily proven, and you have to build a whole new facility for that, which could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And so your costs are going to be more than the non-bio-based product. And how do we get that market? How do we establish that market? And so, you know, I think of the government as being a catalyst for that. You can have subsidies or loan guarantees or tax incentives or something, but there needs to be a way when we have new technologies that are producing either new products or the same products in a new way, we need to give them some ability to get out to the marketplace, those initial first steppers. Because after that, then there will be the venture capital and a lot of other ways where people will come in. But those initial steps, I think it's really important to set the right policies to do that. And that's part of implementation. The second thing is, can we have a market pull to get those markets? Can we do that? And I think it exists already in some cases. We have companies that have sustainability pledges. They want to meet those sustainability pledges. These bio-based products, this bioeconomy can help achieve that. We have consumers who want to buy things that are less impactful on the environment. And so I think, and then we have governments who are big procurers. Can they set targets for products that are based in the bioeconomy? So we can pull from that end of the supply chain to do that. So I think that's that. In terms of 2025 and above, and later, we do have a change of administration happening next Monday in the United States. And nobody can predict the future, but I can say that I think bioeconomy is bipartisan, and I think that the people so far who have benefited from bioeconomy, the rural communities, the farmers, all the way through the supply chain, really think that this is the way forward. And it is important for those people to tell their stories to the new people in power. And I think if they tell those stories will be successful and they will understand the need to keep this. So I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that there won't be a major change on this particular topic in the United States because it is already so ingrained as an important thing going forward.
Thank you very much. That's good to hear. There's a reason for optimism. Joachim, last not least, you mentioned already partnerships and not thinking in sectored policies as one of the things going forward. Could you share any other thoughts on implementation, please?
Yeah. I mean, we need to talk about money. Financing the bioeconomy. Does it really require so deep pockets, which Greg has mentioned for the US programs? We in Germany have also invested a couple of billions in bioeconomy, and more than that at the EU level, and many European countries, fairly large investment. And a lot of that was taxpayers' money. But compare it with the funding for agriculture at the European level, then bioeconomy financing was a peanut compared to the 40 billion at EU level plus national programs. So I think we need to take a hard look for finance, mobilizing finance for implementing the innovations in the bioeconomy, more involvement of the banking sector. We need bioeconomy funds which can farm out and incentivize startups with different players. That innovation, I think, at country level, and maybe we need to talk about that at global level, and especially when bioeconomy serves global public goods. Secondly, as I said, you need money and people. You don't need biomass to start the bioeconomy. You need people and money. So people, knowledge, the education programs, the university training programs, that's for the long term. That matures within 5 to 10 years, but we need that too. Let me come back to one point which you, Kanyavim, made. You said how you measure the bioeconomy. Don't stop measuring the bioeconomy by GDP contribution, because GDP does not embrace resource waste, the destruction of resources and so on, doesn't capture home goods, doesn't capture well-being. So I think we need a whole net benefits approach, measuring the outcome of bioeconomy and not so much the inputs or the contribution to GDP.
Thank you very much. A lot of things to discuss and think about. So it's up to you now. We're waiting. I'm looking for your question. Just for the organization, there is one microphone standing there, and I think the one moving microphone will lady around. So yeah, just start with. Thank you. First lady in the back, and then we'll turn to you.
Hello, I am Marcela de Souza from an NGO working in India. I'll just present a question from the way a farmer asked us. A farmer once asked us, a small farmer asked us, we always talk about what we should do. Why is it we do not talk about what we should not do? From that perspective, I would like to ask this question that is burning for us. How are frameworks assessing the trade-offs? How do we measure what limit beyond which we should not go in this whole aspect of trade-offs, particularly with respect to the environment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to take that question first? Kanyavim.
I think we used to look at the compete interest in terms of food and energy in producing, or advancing bioeconomy. However, I think the latest model that I saw in the papers and also what they apply in Thailand, the competing interest between food and energy because of limited amount of land is not enough anymore. We look at food, energy, water, biodiversity, we call this, and climate nexus. So I think the model that we have to look at now is more complex than it used to be. It's more complicated. And I think if we are able to address what all evolved or involved in the bioeconomy, I think we should be able to find the optimum point where we can, use bioeconomy to advance the benefits for all, not only the top industry, but also the farmers. What I feel right now is that we don't look at the issue from all angles, but from the latest model that I see, and I think the direction that will go, it will be more and more involved of all the factors involved, and I think that would be a way to go.
It is a very good question to think about what we should not do. Yeah, I think I've been working with small farmers and for a long time, and I think this is for us. Our experience, our learning has been that we are in question of the future of this small farming in the whole system. Yeah, what is the role that we will play? And I think this is what drives this question. So should I become this or become that? Because the future of small agriculture is on question. So what I think we should be looking into is the production systems. Yeah, that's. I think that's the key question behind the sustainability of small farming over the years. It's connected to climate resilience. It's connected to that, and it is a mindset change also, because over the years we have experienced how to adapt our agriculture in a way that how do you say this, but. That is provoking them to change. So what we've been doing is, that's why I talked about biohubs and things like more practical, because in order to pursue change in how we produce, you have to be close, you have to be working, both accredited, technical systems, all these tools that we have that's very simple, but for some reason are not there. These are the potential tools to help this, what we should not do. So we should not do so many agrochemicals. But how do we do that? Bio input. So there's a piece of legislation, but also there's a piece in change of mind, and that is done by people talking. It's not done only by numbers and products. It is done by people talking. So that's why the part of education, the systems, for us, it's very important in terms of driving the future and the youth in this movement.
Thank you very much. Joachim, please.
This question you raised was on our mind when we prepared for the UN Food System Summit in 2021. And there are various papers based on best modeling exercises to address exactly that question of synergies and trade-offs to achieve SDG 2, the income goal, the nutrition goal, and the sustainable production goals. And the somewhat surprising outcome of best modeling in that field was the trade-offs are not big. They are not big. So I point to especially the work by Tom Hertel and others, published in the Food Systems Innovation volume in Springer Publishers, free downloadable.
Thank you very much. Next question from the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Dill from Trustec in Germany. I have a question for Geoffrey and for Karina. Geoffrey, I would like to have maybe a clarification regarding the difference of executive order towards the strategy. I mean, I think executive order is only for one legislative period. How you manage that, and or maybe I misunderstood, because it's a shorter time period than a strategy which is normally supposed to be long-term. In terms of giving investment security for companies who invest then into the outlines or the points to achieve in this executive order. And my question to Karina is, could you develop a little bit, because you were talking about the industrial scale and the experience you have made from the bioethanol complex, compared to what we want to achieve now in the bioeconomy. and because the bioethanol was probably a very monoculture, and with bioeconomy we want to address more biodiversity, I suppose. Thank you.
Can you please remember the questions and answers, and then I have a third question coming up, and then we do the round of answering.
And my question goes to Karina, but maybe also Ms. Karina, the other gentlemen and ladies can answer about the indigenous people. I mean, we see it might be very challenging to involve indigenous people, and maybe it would be nice if you could elaborate a little bit more how you're trying to overcome those challenges, especially when you talk about international cooperation, right? I mean, sometimes lack of trust, also the history of certain international intervention in those regions might have created mistrust, and how now with this new strategy you try to overcome them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's go on. Maybe we look at US politics first, and then on energy and on indigenous.
So you ask a good question. I think, a strategy at the United States would be a document that is a policy document for the government. An executive order is similar to that. The difference is the executive order is signed by the president and usually has more specific implementation associated with it. So if you look at this executive order, there are a number of different things. And the executive order is actually a call to action for the federal government. So a strategy may be broader, it'd be broader to the whole country or something like that. But the executive order specifically asks heads of different secretaries of different ministries, different offices to do specific things in specific time periods. And the White House then keeps them accountable to those things. So I think of an executive order as actually more more impactful, because it is sort of saying this is a high priority of the White House and these are the things we want done and we are going to check to make sure you do it. But it is limited to the federal government. It does not talk about what will happen with others and so forth and so on. With that in mind, some executive orders stay from presidency to presidency and some get reversed. I don't think this one will be reversed. There are clearly executive orders from President Biden that will be reversed on day one of President Trump. But this one I do not think will be reversed. Again, historically, there have been other biotechnology executive orders, bioeconomy executive orders, similar in nature from presidents from both parties.
Thank you.
Okay. It is? Okay. Not yet. The other? Regarding the question on bioenergy, bioethanol, and biodiversity, I think there are two things. I will have 3 points on that. I think, first of all, Brazil has to learn a lot of how it created a bioenergy complex in terms of innovation, investment, and science and technology, because that is something that will drive bioeconomy into diversifying sectors. Bioenergy still remains a very important segment in our strategy for bioeconomy. But we have to look into the future in terms of how we are looking into our climate targets, our NDCs, and our biodiversity targets. And when we look at that, Brazil has, different from Thailand, who was saying have to do the trade-offs on food and energy. We don't have that because we have extensive land ground to continue to work on both segments. What we have now, just to give some numbers, because sometimes you just look at the map, we have a target on restoration of 24 million hectares in the new policy of native vegetation coverage. So 24 million, and this is, we are covering with who? It's part of a restoration, ecologically and productive. And of course, right now we have like cocoa as one of the very good examples of how agroforestry repays you like 10 times more than cattle on the ground. But we can have more, including bioenergy. the diversification of seeds and crops are also something very important. It is already in the policies of energy, of our energy policies. And we have 55, and this number changed, so maybe there are others, but if I'm correct, it's 55 million hectares of degraded land who can be used into more important productive systems. And that can be like mixing cattle, grains, forest, that can be adopting agroforest, that can be many uses. So when you look into the future of bioeconomy, we look into that part of our targets and see how bioeconomy can actually create and help use this land in a better use. And that requires not only thinking, and that's my last point, it requires to look at the carbon markets, of course, to finance and fund this. But on our strategy, we are also associating not only carbon, but beyond carbon, the ecosystem services associated to these production models. And I think this would be something very innovative from the policies we are laying down, to ensure that when we grow with more positive on nature, not only on economy and job creation. So this is one point, and then biodiversity, of course, is not only about biomass, so it is also about genetic resources, high-intensive biotechnology, and I think this is a very important approach. And the third piece for us is what I mentioned about traditional knowledge, traditional people and indigenous people who has a social bioeconomy. And this social bioeconomy is already positive in nature, very positive for the planet. Yeah, it conserves our forests and our nature. So that's why like ecosystem services beyond carbon for us is very important, because it recognizes the whole role they play, not only carbon stock, but ecosystem services. And that connects me to the second question about how including indigenous and traditional people into bioeconomy, what are the challenges for that? It is a challenge every time. For us, it took us 2 years to build, in this government, to build a notion that it's not a dispute term, but it's the great opportunity that we have to have a plan, a development plan for these people that connects the whole sustainable aspects of people, nature, and economy. It took us a different approach. So if you look at the national strategy on bioeconomy, it refers, on the second objective, it refers to the social biodiversity, to the biodiversity associated to people. And that biodiversity associated with people requires a different approach. So we started, before the strategy was launched, we started to work with them on territorial workshops, on many representatives to build how bioeconomy would stand out for them. And I think that is a very important approach to ensure that we are not launching something that is on the same level for high developed industries and on biodiversity, on social biodiversity. And just to end on that, for the connection of these people with genetic resources and high industry and biotechnology, Brazil has a very strong system connected to the Nagoya Protocol and the ABS system. So that ensures us, and the participatory approach that we are dealing right now ensures that we can evolve on that. So what we are doing with them, they are part of the council, of the board. So we are doing training, we are doing many other approaches to ensure that they are fully prepared for these incentives and this approach from the industry better than in the past. So that's.
Well, thank you very much. It's part of my job to have a check on the time, and to my great dismay, I have to conclude this really inspiring discussion workshop. I'm aware that there are a lot of more questions, so please take the questions to the panelists after the finalization of this expert panel. Thank you all very much, audience, but especially also speakers and discussion. Thank you for very great panel.